one and done deal. This is an ongoing conversation. All right, so I'm gonna have the panelists introduce themselves. I'm gonna go alphabetically by first name. So let's start with Ajori. Can you just tell us who you are and your experience and all of that?
I'm Majora Spencer. I am a band director in Pinellas County. I'm the band director at Madeira Beach Fundamental School, and I just finished my 7th year of teaching.
Nice. Anna?
My name is Anna Pena, and I work at Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I've been working there since 1982, and I've been working with urban schools and schools with a lot of diversity. And I hope this will open up a lot of conversation and see where we're headed and where we're going.
Okay, good. Benny?
Hey, I'm Benny Bolden. I'm the former director of bands at Barron Collier High School, where I ended my career. Miami Northwestern, Bellevue Middle School. I taught both middle school and high school and enjoyed my time in that particular career. I now serve as the proud principal of R. Frank Mims Middle School right here in Tallahassee, Florida. Looking forward to the discussion.
Good. Bernie?
Hello, everyone. My name is Bernie Hendrix. I am currently the band director at Ocoee High School here in Orange County, Orlando, Florida, where I also taught at Robbinswood Middle School here in Orlando as well, just completing year number 24.
Nice. Ian?
Hi, I'm Ian Schwent, a band director at Titusville High School, and I'm just transitioning into the FBA president, and I've been teaching for 21 years.
Good. Let's go with Ian. Neil.
Oh, Neil Jenkins, Executive Director. I've been teaching forever, and I'm kind of monitoring the attendees and opening chat when we need to and looking for hands to be raised.
Got it. Shelby?
How's it going, everybody? Shelby Chipman, former director at Miami American High School for 1 year and Miami Central High School for 9 years. Of course, I've been at Florida A&M University now for 21 years. I think this is year 21 or 22 coming up, give or take. And also served as district chair down in Miami-Dade County. And thank you guys for being here today. This is very important.
And we also have a special guest, Julian. Do you want to say hello, Julian White?
Yes, my name is Julian White, and I retired after 50 years of teaching, and I'm still teaching, which takes us up to about 58 years. I certainly enjoy it. And I taught at William Raines High School for 10 years and was a former member of the FABD. And most certainly I want to compliment FBA on the things that you're doing here now, because having come from there, from the FABD, I just appreciate so much and compliment you on the progress that you have made.
Great. So we're going to turn it over now to Shelby. Check my notes. Shelby and Bernie are going to talk a little bit about where we've been as an organization.
Thanks again, Kathy. And a lot of this comes and steers from a conversation actually I had recently with Dr. White, so he can jump in and help me out with this. But I certainly want to recognize Florida Bandmasters Association for the long history that we've had since our inception during the 1930s and all the pioneers that started this organization many years ago. And of course,
Shelby,
the principal.
Sorry to interrupt, Shelby. You might want to move closer to your mic.
Okay. I'll be in your living room in a second, but that's fine. Sorry about that.
Door's always open, Shelby.
And of course, the fundamental purpose we all know within the scope of FBA is to improve the quality of instrumental programs. And certainly we've done that through the inclusion of all the multiple festivals, clinic sessions that are offered in district level and state level. The overall goal being academic success and student success in the classroom in our different programs. Of course, later on, I'm just giving a historical perspective here, everybody. In 1941, the Florida Association of Black Band Directors was established by Leander Kirksey, who was a former director of bands at FAMU, along with 30 other Black band directors. So not sure how many of you may be aware of that. And it was interesting during those times, again, speaking with some of the pioneers, some individuals thought that Black bands, of course, during that time could rival any of the bands as relates to white bands during that time. There was just a lot of diversity and outstanding organizations during that time. There was a lack of diversity among panelists during that time as relates to Black adjudicators, and that's something that we're going to talk about here today. We also noticed quite a bit of during that time, there was some inequity as it relates to use of instruments, such as black bands typically had, being honest with you, sousaphones in the concert setting, and white bands had the regular concert instruments. As it relates to instruments in the French horn family, we didn't have double horns. You know, we had single horns. But despite it all, just hearing all the conversations with folks I've talked to over the years, we made it work. Black band directors, black students, parents, etc., made it work. And I just think this is interesting and important for us all to know, because we, you know, we see the shiny covered books now that we have. We see the great uniforms that, you know, uniform companies are making, but it wasn't always like that. And all of this leads to where we are now, and of course where we're going. And I was talking with Dr. White, and he mentioned to me how it was important for him, as it relates to growing, to visit sight reading rooms. I mean, how many of us do that now, where we observe others that may be in sight reading rooms, just to get a perspective as to some of the things that they might tell the students as it relates to the sight reading room and what's important to emphasize. There was a culture change when many of the high school band directors that were black, those schools changed, and those schools became middle schools. So a lot of the black high schools lost their identity just in terms of the continuity of having a black director that was able to lead them through those respective times. Literature on the state level, I'm sure Neil and many of you can relate to. Back then, there was a time where the state association through FBA assign each school what piece to play, at least one piece that they had to play, and then the director was able to, of course, select the other piece along with their march. The merger, of course, came about in 1966 within the scope of the Florida Association of Black Band Directors and FBA. And many of us and many of them during that time that I've talked to thought that that was for the good of the association, and that a lot of good opportunities would come about as it relates to shared learning and, of course, listening to ensembles, concerts, things of that nature. And we know that a major shift took place even in the 60s with James Chief Wilson, who was director at Jones High School, and Delbert Dell Kefner, who was director at Edgewater High School in Orlando. And there's an article that's out there, some of you may have read, on A Tale of Two Bands that was published in the Orlando newspaper. And it basically centered around these two programs, although different in nature, still striving towards the same common goals, as they both were preparing for the 1964 World's Fair in New York City, and the perspective of the two bands. And recently, even Nina Jones, the daughter of Chief Wilson, brought the documentary to Florida A&M, and I had the entire marching band to visit, and they witnessed the debut, at least on our campus, of the Marching Forward documentary. And I don't know how many of you have seen that, but it's a great documentary on those two programs. And I certainly would invite you all to just get the perspective of what those schools dealt with in that area during that time, but the collegiality that came about through them working together, and the fundraising events, and the students, the shared learning, and even the concerts that came about later on, that the Jones Band had, not only in the World's Fair in New York City, but also in Washington, D.C. And then later on, the Black Caucus came about. And initially, it was started because of some discrepancies as it relates to some folks that thought that some things may have been said by adjudicators from one perspective regarding ratings, but at the same time, we use this, and this is during the time I guess I came into FMA during the late 80s, early 90s. We use this as an opportunity to grow and yes, kind of let individuals know what some of the concerns were from the Black Caucus, but again, the happy marriage that was able to be developed, much of which by Dr. Julian E. White, who's on this call, is attributed to those directors that believed in that. And then, of course, we know there's always been some caution and or conversation about entertaining bands that are entertaining, and then those bands that somewhat may not be as entertaining, and understanding the culture of that band and whether or not it's important to you to provide music selections and or show concept that meets the scope of your audience, which it should. And most important is the entertainment aspect of that. And I think that's really important, that as we continue to allow adjudicators to become part of this association, that they understand how to, especially in the marching band area, that they understand how to be respectful to all styles of marching band. And I think we've done a good job overall within FBA in terms of making sure that all styles of marching are emphasized during the trainings. And I think as we continue to do that, I think it will be commensurate with the outcomes for those adjudicators that are feeling comfortable judging any style marching band. And I do want to compliment the adjudication committee on that. And we still have room to grow, but certainly these are just some things I wanted to highlight. Didn't want to take all the time, just with as it relates to where we were, and knowing there are a lot of dots to be connected even since 1930. But I just wanted to highlight those points for now, Kathy.
Okay, is it me? All right, so
Yeah, sorry, the dog just decided to bark at somebody just at that moment. So I was trying to present it. Yeah, Bernie, can you take it from there then?
yeah, I'm gonna pick up here, and Dr. Chipman mentioned the Black Caucus and the formation of the Black Caucus, and I guess when I became active in Florida Bandmasters Association, FBA, FMEA, and everything, as a member of the Black Caucus, we came in and we got to a point to where we felt like some of our needs were, it was a lot of, you would go to FMEA convention in January and there were no minorities presenting. Or let me not say no, but very few presenting. You know, and there were very few minorities that were clinicians for any of the, not just necessarily the bands, but you know, all of the all-state groups, you know. So we had a big push in the mid 90s. It was a big push to increase minority presenters at FMEA in January, and also to increase the number of minority clinicians that were there. And we kind of started to hit that mark. We started to hit that goal. And then, you know, as a member of Black Caucus and working my way in, I was asked by several Hispanic directors, hey, can you help us out on some issues? We don't have any representation either. And this was beyond FBA. This was just, they were just regular music teachers, just like me. Well, you know, just like us, we're music teachers and band directors. So we went through a change that was received and a little bit of a push to change the name from the Black Caucus to the Multicultural Network, because we wanted to be a little more inclusive of all of the ethnic diversity of all music educators here in the state of Florida. So that was where the name change came in, I guess, 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. And we kind of moved forward from there, and we've been fairly active, and, you know, so we're continuing to grow and continuing to do our best, but that's an FMEA thing. So when we look from where we were to where we are right now, as far as FBA is concerned, one of the things I thought was important for us to note, and these are facts as of kind of yesterday a little bit, as they are changing now as we are going through you know, it's summer, so we're going through a president change as well as a district officer change and that type of thing. But I thought it was important just to bring up a few facts here. FBA has been around for 84 years, since, 1936, I guess, if I did the math right. That's 84 years. And currently we have in our Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken, there are 3 Black band directors in the Hall of Fame: Colonel McFarland, Chief Wilson, and Ken Talbert. And in our roll of distinction, there's 2 Black members, Dr. Julian White, who's on the call right now, as well as Leander Kirksey. In our offices, now understanding that district offices, it is voluntary. So we get that, it is voluntary, but as of, I guess you could say, this past year, we had one Black district chairperson, and that was Travis Henry. I'm not sure what district that is, but and we had 23, there's 23 committees. And as far as we look right now, and again, this is probably going to shift a little bit as we work into, things changing. We had Edgar Rubio was the only person of color that was a committee chair. Not saying not a committee member, but a committee chair in this last little section of where we are. So, and this is a two-way street. I always look at this as a two-way street because one, you have to be asked to be on a committee chair, but two, you have to be willing to be a committee chair and willing to be a district chair and so forth and so on. So it is a two-way street that we're dealing with in our current place. Moving forward, I think there's great opportunities for everybody. I know we mentioned before about adjudication and where we were with minorities on the FBA adjudicators list, even when I started teaching 20 some odd years ago to where we are now. I'll never forget when I was a student, when I was teaching at Robbinswood Middle School, I had a student that literally came up to me, and in Robbinswood, if you didn't know, it's in Orlando, it's in the hood in Orlando. And it was, I think we were 93% Black, and the other 7% was probably Hispanic. So I had a kid come up to me, a baritone player, and he said, Mr. Hendrix, I've gone to solo ensemble. He was in the 8th grade. I've gone to solo ensemble 2 years in a row. And both years, I've never seen, even when I go into, my friend's room and watch them play, I've never seen a Black judge. He didn't say Black. He said, I've never seen a judge that looked like me. And I was like, yeah, you're right. That's something that we need to work on. That was my answer. I didn't have an answer for him. But my basic answer was, you know what, you're right. And that was something that, to be honest with you, I didn't think. I was so concerned with just being a band director that I didn't think there was a need for, let me say not a need, but you just don't think about it until somebody brings it to your attention. And at this time, the person that brought it to my attention just happened to be a 13-year-old baritone player. And then we started talking about All-State and all that type of stuff. This same kid was my first kid at Robbinswood to make All-State. When I first started and I started talking about All-State at a middle school level back then, they were looking at me like, man, we just trying to go out here and shoot some hoops or something. We don't want to make no All-State. So it was a culture change, and being willing to make that culture change, we ended up getting kids into All-State and to All-County Band. And that was a while ago. So I think like I said, it's a two-way street. We have to be willing to do the work. And now I do feel like FBA has done a great job of opening doors and giving us opportunities to be active and just to participate. I mean, we're here now and I've talked to some other directors in other states, and I think that we are way, way, way ahead of the curve in what we're doing just by having a conversation. And this particular forum, it allows us to see where we need to improve, what our issues are, and how we can move forward. So we're going to talk a little bit about some recruitment things and retaining and the transition from middle school to high school. So I'm going to kick it over to Anna Pena, who is going to give you guys some insight on some of her experiences dealing with recruitment and issues of that nature.
And before we do that, if you want to raise your hand, we're going to kind of go through what we've prepared and then have a question and answer at the end. But if you have questions that get sparked, go ahead and type them in the question and answer box. If we don't get to them through this forum, we'll certainly write them down and come back to them later. So go ahead, Anna. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Bernie. And thank you for being here, everyone, and thinking of what's going over. We've been discussing this, and my situation in middle school is, as an FBA member, as someone that's been around a long time, I was under Kenneth Talbert, so I learned a lot. Always around people of color, and as I told my kids, they're good people, and they're bad people. It doesn't matter what color they are. And I see in middle school the transition over to high school. High school band directors have to continue, like Bernie said, moving forward. The students have to know what's out there. If they're not part of the association, which is what I was saying, if you're not part of the association, your students cannot be involved. That's an issue right there. Students want to be involved, but if they don't have that opportunity, they're not going to see what's out there. And I've always said, there's a standard there. And again, it doesn't have to do with color. It has to do with musicianship and what's out there. Yes, we must know our communities, but if the students don't get a chance to do that, it makes it difficult. I've talked to my high school band directors, parents who come out, well, they made it in honors band. They went to All-State. Why aren't they trying out in high school? Oh, because the directors didn't. I'm not saying they have bad program. They don't. Music is so important to everybody. They don't have bad programs, but the kids don't have that opportunity, and they need to know what's out there. Just making them aware, like Bernie said, his 8th grader or his young student who at least he got an opportunity to go to solo and ensemble. He went out there and experienced that. Is it going to take work? Doggone it, it's going to take work. It takes a lot of work to get these kids and getting them involved. Yeah, it's a culture change. That's one thing I do. I try to bring to my kids what they don't have the opportunity to see. I listen to their music because I think it's so important for them to bring me their music. And of course, I have to make decisions about certain things, but about getting them to listen to certain things. And I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong or right, First Amendment, you know, but there's certain things that we need to do as directors. I've gone to even principals. Is it a financial thing? Is that the problem? Then that something needs to be worked out. And that goes with the administrators. And what, are you gonna hold back because the kids can't afford it? What can we do to try to get these fees paid so they have the opportunity to know about these things? When my kids made All-State, even if it's one person, those kids come back so enthused and talking about, gosh, this is what I learned. I go, did you make some friends? Yes. Did you see people that look like you? Where was that opportunity? But if they don't get that chance, there's nothing. Bernie talked about the future, about seeing directors. Aren't we also helping these kids to mold them? I'm on my 38th year. I tried as an educator, a music educator, as an educator, to make them see good things, even while bad things were going on. And we discussed these things. But we also need representation. By the time they're out there, maybe conducting and soloing ensembles, I can say to them, yes, you can. Yeah, you can be one of those people out there. And I think if they don't have that opportunity, and again, speaking from the middle school perspective, after giving it to them, and for them to go into high school opportunity and not get that chance, it's kind of like cutting that opportunity. And there's so much out there. And of course, if they get cut out of that, they're going to find something else to do. They're going to find something else to do. And I'm just going to say that I think through the time I've been in FBA, a lot of things have happened. Things are, yes, now we have to act upon it. We can say it, we can discuss it, but within my time, things are starting to change, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So maybe I need to turn it over to Ian, or high school band director, or to see what you want to put in to the conversation.
Okay, let me just piggyback on a few things, because we talked, a couple of things that Anna mentioned was, and this is something that in our lower communities where money is an issue, we deal with this. And Benny, I'm going to ask you if you don't mind to chime in here in a second. We deal with, well, Mr. Hendrix, I don't want to audition for All State, because if I do look up and make it, I don't have the money to go. So why should I even waste the time to prepare to audition? So, and that is something that's real. And it may not necessarily just be in those lower socioeconomic areas. That could be anywhere. You know, kids may not say it, but that could be something that they're definitely feeling. So what do we do if we're a director and we're in that situation where I know this kid is talented, I know these kids or whatever can benefit from this experience and they can grow, but in their mind, they're already saying, you know what, it's a waste of time. There's no way I'm going to do it. And even if I did make it, I'm not going to be able to afford to get there. Or I don't want to burden my parents or my single mom who's doing everything, or vice versa. You know, so why should I even do that? I'm tossing this out there for Benny because I know that he's dealt with it on both ends, and I know he has managed to work things out from back in the Northwestern days and even at the Barron Collier days. So, Dr. Bolden, please.
Well, I was going to talk about, I know Anna mentioned, is it a financial issue? And the truth of the matter is social economic disadvantage happen beyond color. We all know that. White, Black, Hispanic, Chinese, it doesn't matter. That problem exists beyond social bounds, ethnicity bounds. But it is a financial issue, and it's difficult for us to overlook, or we cannot overlook the fact that is a major problem within the Black community. You know, opportunities are not the same from Title I schools versus non-Title I. I had the pleasure of serving as a band director at a Title I, non-Title I. I've seen those issues. But what thing that bothered me is how much my principal did not know, and the problems that I face every day. And so it was not a lot of people, not necessarily look like me, but didn't understand me. So there wasn't a lot of principals who came from an arts background. It was important for me to take that step and say, I know this craft. I know the struggles that they face. Then I got into the assignment and I realized funding is not all the same. It is not created equal. And then the opportunities, when you look at a Title I school and the things that they're faced with in terms of grades, the expectation from the state, intensive reading and intensive math, lower 25%. When you look at that from a Caucasian standpoint, from a non-Title I kind of school, your lower 25 percentile may not be as large as mine. So I have a middle school that has 520 kids. 500 of them could be my lower 25. That changes the game on how I spend money in my school to make sure that they have the structure that they need. The problem here is when you put that into that perspective, things like music and arts begin to fall on that list in terms of what's important to me, because now my job is depending upon whether or not this school becomes successful. And there's a high turnover. And so it becomes much bigger than that. So this is why, even as a band director, I did what I could. I remember when I became the band director at Bellevue. Bellevue hadn't had a band in 3 years. It didn't, they hadn't won a festival in about 15 years. And I remember, getting in there, getting on the radio here in Tallahassee, asking for instruments from anybody. I didn't have the instruments of some of my counterparts. I saw Dr. Antman on this call, and I would go to festival and his band was playing Orpheus of the Underworld and Irish Tune. I mean, just some fantastic sounds, and I loved it, but I couldn't expect that from Bellevue. So the reality is we have to have realistic expectations for some of these programs. And that's the problem that I don't see a lot of times. FBA is great, and it supported me from the time I arrived to, and I'm still in it today, and I believe in it because I understand research. I understand how important arts is to the fabric of education. My dissertation was principal's perception of arts education, because I needed to know what is the perception of the administrator on the campus and how he values arts education. And so it's important for me to now be able to tell my colleagues how important this is. So there is a clear difference between accessibility on those campuses, whether it be middle, high, or elementary, doesn't matter. We would like to be able to provide some things, but sometimes the budget don't allow you because of all the things that come into play. So, you know, we have to do what we can in order to make it work. I remember even being at Northwestern, and one of the judges told me at the time, well, you need to, you know, look at, you know, buffet clarinet, you know, Robin and ligatures and things. It sounds good, not my kids, you know. I got them to come to rehearsal. I'm winning, you know. You know, but then I go to Baron Collier and, you know, all of my clarinets had, you know, it is what it is. So,
and you purchase a harp too.
And I purchased a harp, you know, and I took a picture and sent it to my professor. You know, but again,
right.
It is that expectation. What is the expectation? And I do believe, as Bernie was saying earlier, they will rise to that expectation if we set realistic goals for them. So even if it's a, you know, whatever, beyond color, we have to make realistic expectations.
Great point. You know, I'm going to kick over to Ajori here for a second. He's the youngest guy on this group right here. And he's got some really unique stories, maybe from where he was coming up. I know he grew up in rural Georgia, right? Yeah. But he's come a long way and he's doing a great job. But I think to kind of, if you guys really listen to what Benny said, a lot of times we know this already, but we have to educate our administrators.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? We have to take the time to educate our administrators on the importance of what it is we do and how what we do can affect the overall mindset or whatever, or what they want to hear. Well, how is that going to affect our school grade? Well, you know, we all know the research, so we don't have to go through it. But that's something that we got to do. And, you know, looking at the people that I see in here, there's a lot of experienced directors on this attendee list. All right, so you guys probably already know this, but I guess Benny's main message is we might have to go out and talk to those 7-year and under directors and really get them to understand. It goes back to what Anna was saying about the mentoring thing. Nobody's telling these guys, our younger generation, of what we need to do and how it can be done, regardless of where they're teaching, but even more the ones that are teaching in those struggling areas. Nobody will ever really know what it is you're supposed to be doing. I overheard this, a young band director going to another young band director to try to get help on some stuff, and both of them end up not getting help and failing. You know? So us older crew, we gotta make sure that we're looking out for the younger crew. Now, speaking of looking out for the younger crew, Ajori, can you give us a little perspective as coming from your background in rural Georgia to now being a band director in Pinellas County, and how you have been able to kind of work through some of the issues before we get into Ian's segment about where we're going?
Well, I think that a lot of what people have talked about has come from the idea of having to shape or change potentially a program's culture. So like Bernie mentioned, I came from rural Georgia, and I shared with this panel a few days ago, I was in, I think, 9th or 10th grade before I had a band director who ever told me that all state was something that existed. So if you think about my sort of path going, you know, being in band from 6th grade forward, I could have potentially gotten all the way from middle school, all the way through high school, and you could have looked and said, hey, this kid, you know, just isn't participating. Maybe they don't care. I had no idea it existed. And that just so happened that, you know, I got a director in who was like, hey, this seems like something you might be interested in, and they took that extra time. So I think sometimes as we start looking at the particular numbers and we start looking at the data, we have to ask ourselves a number of questions, including exposure. And if exposure is one of those sort of barriers in the way, then we have to see how we can get there. So I know for me, going from rural Georgia, I went to FSU, and because it was such a large program with so many people, that sort of allowed me to make a lot of the connections that I needed to learn sort of the Florida way, or the Florida system. Because speaking to a lot of people who come from other states, it is a lot and it's very overwhelming. So I think one of the things that going forward that we're working on is what are ways that we can reach out to these college students to sort of give them a support network, or know that that network exists before they ever graduate. Because it could have been, I could have gone from a small school in Georgia to a small college or university in Florida, and still could have potentially not made enough connections to say, hey, I have 40 people I can call and get help. Where if this person doesn't answer, I can go down my list because I've met so many people. So sort of building that network for those younger directors very early on is going to be really important. I think it's going to lead into, as we go to Ian's section, is going to sort of lead in some of these guiding questions that we ask.
Yeah, it's been really great for me to get to listen to these discussions over the last couple of days too, and it just reminds me again that we as FBA, it's so important that we make sure that we do a great job of making sure that everyone knows the avenues that are available to them in the first place, know the history, know where we've gone, know where we're going, and know that these things exist for us. Social media the last couple of days, we've seen some questions about our lists and the inclusion of a diverse group of composers. And so then it behooves us as FBA to make sure that we are advertising what your district meetings are for. When it says number 12, suggestions of the committee, that's a great time to suggest great music. The FMEA database that Josh has set up for us, that we can advocate for music right then, ways to suggest those things. And Bernie, I love what you said about the options for people to do these things, to volunteer, that we need to make sure that FBA makes sure that everybody understands we want everybody to volunteer. There is no one that we're going to turn away from volunteering. We're going to find a place for everyone to have those options to do those things. Sometimes it's easy, I think, for us to take on an attitude of, well, that's those people at FBA. That's an FBA problem. Those people at FBA don't understand. And they forget sometimes that there is no they at FBA, it's we at FBA, and it's all of us together. We're all part of the same thing, and we all have those same avenues. And I think we as FBA need to work to make sure that everybody knows what those avenues are. And a big part of that, I love what George, what you were saying about the mentoring piece, that we've got to make sure that our mentors are working in such a way that the mentor is not looking down at the mentee and saying, you will do this and do it this way. And this is how it's got to become a collaboration that we're working together. Hey, come on, let's take this trip together. Let me put my arm around you and let's walk it together. Let's look for ways to work together. You're going to make me better. I'm going to make you better. And these are options that are available to us. And then Benny, when I was listening to what you were saying about understanding where we are, I hope that we as FBA can continue our same idea of FBA, and I'm going to talk from the MPA perspective for a moment. We don't care what you do. We don't care what your marching style is. We don't care what grade level you do. We don't care about any of those things. We just care how you do it. We want you to do it well, but don't feel like you have to compete with this group down the street. I don't care that that band just played a grade 6 and you played a grade 3. If you play a grade 3 well, I have the exact same respect for you that I do for the band that played the grade 6 down the road, regardless, because we all are in different situations. And I think we as directors sometimes need to take that on as well and make sure that we are praising and holding up in esteem excellence, not achievement on some scale. And those things to me are really, really exciting to do that. So as we continue to look forward, one of the questions that I'm always wondering, and I'll throw out to the panel, what can I do as a person who is a white male band director? Are there places that I'm missing? What are my blind spots? How do I make sure that every student in my band room feels welcomed, feels valued, and is encouraged to do things, whether it's all state, whether it's on ensemble, whether whatever it is, because I believe that's how we get more, a better diversity in our all state ensembles, is to make sure that we are encouraging everyone equally, regardless of any of their backgrounds, any of their socioeconomic status. How do we do that? And what do I need to do as an individual director in my room? What do I need to do the next time I'm in front of kids, or the next time I'm putting together my program? How do I make sure that I'm an inclusive director who is promoting diversity, who is making sure that every kid is valued in my program?
One thing I want to mention, regards to what many of you have already said, and this is somewhat in line with Ian's point, maybe not directly, and that is we have a great collegiate component. And of course, Mark Belfast is doing a phenomenal job with that group in terms of increase in numbers of diverse backgrounds, ethnicity, etc. And so I would say to not only just FBA, but all the component areas, at some point as meetings continue to be established at FMEA or conferences or leadership workshops that those collegiate students are having, that all the component presidents or representative maybe attend some of those sessions that they're having, to let them know what could be some of their expectations that or things that they would have to consider or deal with when they become teachers, because they are our future here. And the other thing is the collegiate folks, we have to have some buy-in too, with letting the students that are going to be graduating know what the expectations are, what are some of the things and the practices that are presented out in the different district areas, all of which are different. I mean, I think back to 1930, again, on that historical perspective, when we started with 2 districts. Now I think, Kathy, we probably have up to 21, 22 districts. So, I mean, we have really grown, and there's quite a bit of diversity within that. So I would say to the component presidents or representative to reach out to the collegiate components. This is just one suggestion, and work more with Mark Belfast and those college students to let them know and let them see your faces beyond just the music supervisors, who are, of course, in contact with them. But there's some districts that don't have music supervisors in the state. So, but we do have a representative from all the component organizations. And so I would recommend that, Ian.
I love that idea, Shelby. And if you can help us, put us in connection and in contact with the right people, to make sure that we get that information shared so everybody knows when those things go on too. And just like we talked about earlier, so much of this, it behooves us to do a better job of making sure that everybody's aware of opportunities that are out there for them.
Just a point of reference too, for our summer conference coming up in 2 weeks, there is, I don't have the schedule in front of me, it is on Thursday the 25th at 12:30. There is a clinic on teaching in the virtual environment, and it is being hosted by the collegiate NAFME president. We've got him pulled in. Julian Grubbs is taking over, and so we're working towards kind of bringing those collegiate members in a more significant manner, recognizing them at the January conference for being in the room, and including them at the table in some of those discussions and leading things as well.
I want to go real quick. I want to just go back to Ian's question about being a white male band director and making sure that you're getting the whole scope of what's in front of you. And the reason why I want to go back is just real quick. I had the opportunity and pleasure, or whatever you want to call it, to do my senior internship with Jack Crew at Lincoln High School. And one of the things that Jack did that I thought was absolutely fabulous was he took the leadership. This was early. He took the leadership to FSU to watch the marching chiefs practice, just to get an idea how to run. And then a week later, he took the same kids to FAMU to watch the marching 100 practice. So just by that, and he had, at that particular time, he had black and white leadership kids, but just that simple field trip of going to both schools, it made everybody felt good, because the black kids that were in that band program, they had the opportunity to see something that looked like them and something that they're more familiar with, while the white kids had, so it was great. So it's just being aware that whatever is in front of you in your band program each and every day, you just have to be aware. I think being aware is the first thing that everybody doesn't look like. And me, it's the same way for me. You know, I teach at Ocoee High School. It is 40, 40, 20. And every time you walk around the school, you'll say, yeah, it's very 40, 40, 20. You know, and I'm sitting in front of a band and I got these kids over here that they think the Blue Devils are the greatest thing on the earth. And then I got these kids over here that want to listen to, they want to see FAM or Cookman or Southern, I don't know why, but they want to see one of the HBCU bands. And then I got the FSU band kids. And I got, you know, so we got everything right here. So I think just a matter of being aware. So on our YouTube list in the band room, when it's marching band and the kids want to watch YouTube, there are some things that I'll hear, hey, you guys have done the same thing for like 15 minutes. Can y'all switch it up and do something else? And they'll do it. And everybody kind of sits and enjoys. So,
And in that same vein, Bernie, you know, that speaks a lot to visual representation for kids, because I think back to that same director who talked to me about what All-State was, and I didn't think about this until you just mentioned it. He also put us on a bus and took us to Lassiter High School to watch Alfred Watkins, and that was an experience for me. You know, I had never seen anything like that. I'd never seen anyone like that, and you know, I can't say that didn't have an impact on where I am today.
Bernie, I would say that it is a responsibility. I know Ian said what he does as a white man, but I believe it's all of our responsibility, regardless of color, to engage in some form of fashion. I was the band director at Miami Northwestern, where there is no minority. And then at Barron Collier, 300 kids, I was the minority, you know, and so, but at the end of the day, what are we doing in the classroom? It's all of the hours we have, all of the time, all of the engagement that we have with these kids. What are we doing to ensure that that conversation is being had with the time that we have? Let's just be honest. They with us more than they are at home or with their own parents. And so we do have that opportunity. We have to be conscious enough to make opportunity to at least have the conversation, or just doing something as simple as what Mr. Spencer or Bernie indicated, you know, taking them to different programs, giving them an appreciation for all. And I know, like, even for me as an undergrad student at FAMU, we had instrumental methods, and we looked at all bands, core style, traditionals, and we had to adjudicate all and have an appreciation for all, because you never knew what school you was going to go to. Here I am, a FAMU grad, and I interned at Leon, and them kids didn't care what color I was. They wanted to make sure I knew what I was talking about when I got on that podium. That's all, you know. And so at the end of the day, it's important for us to engage in those conversations and utilize that time wise. All of us.
And if I could say too, I'm not on the panel. In fact, I ended up here by accident, but I certainly am enjoying what I'm hearing. And I just heard Majora mention All-State. And one thing I want to compliment, well, first of all, Black Caucus, and then the Multicultural Committee organization. When we talk about All-State, we realize that All-State is tough. I mean, the standards are very high. And the thing that I so emphasized is the fact that, look, we want to have more Black students in the All-State band. So it means we need to go back to our curriculum and design. In Leon High School, they do All-State materials as a part of their curriculum. And they work so hard with it. But even at that, last year, I think one student from Leon High School made the All-State band. But even though they have done a great deal of practicing, and so as we do this, I hope that we will stress the importance of curriculum design. And then the other thing I want to make a suggestion to, maybe one of the FBA clinics could have a session on how to prepare for All-State band, or how to prepare for, prepare solos and ensembles, requiring students to play solos and ensembles in the band, and then that sets up and give them a better opportunity to do solos for possible be qualifying for the All-State band. So I would suggest that we have some kind of clinic that delineates how we can prepare for All-State band.
Okay, thanks, Doc. We appreciate that. As we are getting close to the end of this, this initial conversation. I just want to look at some of the things that we're doing in FBA to move forward. Where are we going and what are we working on? I know that Ian mentioned the music list and getting more African American, not just African Americans, but minorities, women, all of that, trying to increase our music list, both concert and the S&E list, and that's being done. That's being worked on. There are some people that have stepped up and have volunteered to make these things happen and make these suggestions to the committee. And Dana Cole has been doing a great job of getting some of the music that is out of print, just get it off the list. You can't get it anymore, especially with the solo ensemble list. I know that is a project that she's been working on this year. And
let me correct that, Bernie. It's not get it off the list. It's to take it and put it into a separate category or a separate listing, because our feeling is if it's quality literature and it's not in print, but it's in your library, you should still be able to use it. You know, as a resource. You don't want to have to throw out music that people own. Yeah. But to clean up the list a little bit. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and so we'll have. I'm pretty sure that this group of volunteers, they're very passionate about it. So I'm excited the fact that now somebody's working on it. And you know, nothing changes from the outside looking in. You got to be on the inside to be able to change things. And if you just raise your hand and say, "Hey, I want to do this. Is it okay for me to work on it?" 10 out of 10 times, we're going to say, yeah, work on it and bring it back to committee. Go to your district meeting, all right? And when you get to that suggestion to the committee or suggestion to the FBA board, there's your opportunity to make that suggestion or whatever the case may be.
And I think part of it is that maybe we need to better educate our members as to what power that they have. Well, process, but also what power that they have. Because one of the things, and I think, Rebecca, I don't mean to call you out, but I'm going to. She said, what is FBA doing to, you know, improve the diversity on the list? And I said, go for it. You know, if you've got a list of and I think she was talking about specifically solo and ensemble music. You know, if you've got pieces that you know are written by, with some diverse composers, or likewise, if you know of a piece that's on the list that's of questionable origin or things like that, bring that as suggestions to the committee. You don't have to wait for the leadership to do the heavy lifting. We need you guys to do the research and things like that. And there was a question that just came through about, is there a way we can move towards a members only driven music list rather than accepting music from large publishing companies? We get music sent to the committees, both solo and ensemble and concert, from the publishers, but the members' suggestions actually move through the system a little bit more easily. We value the word of our members rather than just a box of music from publishers. So that's a process that maybe we need to educate people more on how that works. You know, we're not in the, I had this discussion actually with a publisher and a composer back in September. There was a Facebook rant that pissed off Mama Bear, and she went to bat. And you know, the publishers, their whole thing is that they're trying to sell music. And I said, we're not in the advertising business for publishers. So our responsibility is to our members in providing good quality literature. So, you know, if you happen to get some sales because of that, that's great. So we're always working towards a member-driven music list, both solo and ensemble. And now, remember now that the concert music list is now called the Florida Bandmasters Association concert MPA list. So it's basically, these are the pieces we think that are great for this particular experience. Outside of that, play whatever you want. So we're always moving towards that member-driven model rather than publishers down.
Yeah, I was going to mention also, and the National Band Association has just spent a year or two revising its list. So there's a lot of lists to pull from in terms of other minorities that may have pieces that have been placed on the list or we may not be aware of. The other thing I was going to mention, I don't know if Ian was going to mention it, is in line with moving forward, everyone. You know, we talked about developing a reclamation committee, and that's wherein Ian or any component, president or a group, could establish a reclamation committee within their district or within their component area that would find out who are those organizations in this particular FBA, of course, that are not participating in the scope of FBA that maybe we can help. I mean, we have done it in civic organizations and social organizations all the time where we go out and grab somebody and say, hey, what's going on, man? You know, why is it you're not participating? And so I hope that FBA would take the lead with that, with finding out from some of the district chairs why some of the individuals that are that have programs on the middle school, elementary, or high school level that don't have programs that are actively participating. We know there are a plethora of reasons that might be, but I think we have to start to reach out also and pull some of these folks in, and eventually, they'll get on board. And sometimes we just have to pull them in because you'd be surprised as to what some individuals are experiencing in their own programs. I mean, I look at Benny and I think about what he was able to, as he said, what he was able to do at Bellevue, and that was, I mean, it's just amazing that if you know that setting. That was amazing what he's been able to do. No one had to pull him in because, again, that whole FAMU connection where the students knew they had to do certain things. And some of you are adjudicators and you've seen the FAMU students breathing over your necks, trying to finish those sheets and get those tapes in. I mean, but that's just what we do. And I know Steve Kelly does that with the FSU and pre-festivals that they host and whatnot. So just a reclamation committee. That's what I'm saying. We may need to develop that.
And if I could inject one more thing, then I'm not going to say anything else. And it has to do with the confidence level of students of bands who want to participate but feel as though they don't have a chance. I can take my band, but I don't have a chance of making it superior. But I worked for a few years as a consultant for bands in Duval County. And the emphasis that I put on was, look, let's get prepared for our concert MPA on the middle school and high school levels so that you can understand that really it's a matter of quality. And you don't need to worry about whether or not you're going to get a superior or not get a superior because you were Black, but you're going to be qualified and you're going to be in the pool that has possibilities of making a superior. So I agree with Shelby that we must make them aware that there is assistance and they can participate and encourage them to do so.
Yeah, to jump in there, Shelby, we are looking at that, and I really want to. By looking at it, it's going to happen, and I want to marry it with our mentorship program so that both those things go hand in hand, because that's really what it is. Of course, the directors, we all know the directors run the programs, and so we do need to go out and find those schools that aren't participating, and then find ways to connect them with other directors so that they have those opportunities and know what's available to them. Just like Dr. White, with you, what you did with all those schools in Duval County.
One of the things that came up is our student, as I think Bernie talked about, our students not participating because even if they make an all-state ensemble, the funding isn't there. So there's been discussion about maybe researching outside organizations that students and directors can access for equal access to those events after they're qualified. Okay, we're working on an hour, and we really talked about keeping things to an hour or close to it, because we've all been in Zoom meetings for way too long with virtual school. But are there any pressing questions that anyone has that we may not be able to answer them now, but at least it would give us some more things to research, some more discussions to have. Again, this is not a one and done. This isn't to post a statement of support and move on. This is, where are we and where can we be doing better? This is the start of a new set of conversations.
And I want to thank you, Kathy, for your leadership. I know you're officially past president of FBA, as you stated at the beginning of this call, but certainly want to thank you for your leadership. And, we go way back. And I can think of the days we were sitting in the back of Miami Senior High School auditorium on the regular typewriters trying to do Howard Doolin's music supervisor's triplicate sheets. And I think about even at FMEA this past year, and before the Come Sunday by the Omar Thomas was completed with the 11th, 12th grade band, Kathy ran over to me. I think I was sitting behind them. And I saw her in her eyes, everybody, just this gleam like, Shelby, we got to do something about this. And at first, I really didn't know what she meant. And she says, look at that stage. And she says, that music needs to be performed not only by those students that are on stage, but students of other backgrounds. Basically, that's what she said. And Kathy had a look on her face that I will never forget. And I've told her this a couple of times since the FMEA conference this past year. And it's not so much that more minorities weren't there, but what are we really doing to, and that's all part of this entire conversation, but what are we doing in our classrooms where we're not dumbing down any kind of standards that FBA is noted for, but what are we doing as educators to ensure that a standard is maintained based on the students that we're working with, i.e. Benny Bolden, he's playing a grade 2 at the highest level that others, Michael Mann may have played a grade 6 on the middle school level. Well, you play the hand you're dealt. But are we really playing the hands that we're dealt on the classroom that we're getting paid for on a day-to-day basis? And so I want to thank Kathy for your leadership and jumping right in here, because she reached out to us, everybody immediately, to say that we need to do something and not just a one and done. She made that very clear to Bernie and I when we talked about it a week ago. So I just wanted to mention that.
All right. Well, again, we'll keep holding conversations. I think a lot of us are close enough that we can pick up the phone and call each other and work through it. But, you know, I think we just need to keep having conversations, whether it's online. You know, I don't mind conversations on Facebook as long as everybody behaves. You know, we can't publicly air dirty laundry and then expect people to respect the organization. So the conversations can continue. The work that we do to try to make what we do in FBA equitable to all students. You know, Benny talked about a lot of the inequity is from a financial standpoint, and you know, a lot of particular races are affected by those lack of funding. But you know, if funding is an issue, then we need to find alternative ways to make it happen. No student should be denied the access to something just because of money. So that's all I have to say.
I will say, if there are some things that came out from the districts at the recent virtual meeting, I wasn't in all the meetings at, you know, every moment, but if there's some things that came about in your district meetings that I think we need to be addressing, or the membership should know, I think that would be good as we move forward and set the stage for the future with these kinds of forums. I think that would be helpful also.
Well, and I think part of it, Shelby, honestly, and Bernie and I, you know, people that I've called, is people are afraid to actually talk and have the conversations. Yeah. I know they're afraid to say the wrong thing and to have what they're saying, have what they're said misconstrued. And, you know, Shelby, when I was on the phone with you and I was on the phone with Bernie, like I have not really lost my cool or lost my composure during the last 3 months. But these two gentlemen dried my tears because I was so upset over everything that was happening. And I just kept telling him, how do we have these conversations without making things worse? Right. You know, how do we let our hearts be heard and our thoughts be heard without people making snap judgments and working through the problems? So that's why we're here.
Right.
If I can just, and for FBA to have this conversation, that's a step in the right direction. So bravo to you all for bringing this to the forefront and not being scared to have this conversation. I'm okay with having dialogue, and sometimes it might get tense as long as we're listening to both sides of the argument. And a lot of these problems you'll see that we share regardless of color. So absolutely. I appreciate FBA for having this dialogue and bringing this to the forefront. So everybody, I'm just honored.
I had people call me and say, what do you hope to accomplish? What are your goals? What are you doing? Mm-hmm. And I said, we're going to talk. So I appreciate the fact that everybody came, all you attendees. Neil, can you turn the chat back on in case people want to chat?
But can I talk something out here real quick?
Sure, Bernie.
Yes, we have some conversations that we have to have amongst ourselves as adults, but I think the important thing that we have to remember is that we have a very unique relationship with a lot of kids, a lot of young people. And I know a lot of people saw the post that I put out about, hey man, don't forget these kids. Just let me throw this out. My kids, my band kids, and some of their SGA friends at Ocoee High School have started I think it's just called a Let's Chat on Instagram. Wow, I just went blank there for a second. Started a Let's Chat on Instagram, and I think the first night they did it, maybe about a week and a half ago, it might have had 17 or 18 kids on it. Different, various backgrounds, but it was a lot of friends, and they just wanted to talk about what was going on in their feelings. And then they did the second one. I think they did the second one on Saturday, and it was up to around 40 or 50 kids. So they're going to do another one this Saturday. And, so these young people, and I keep telling my kids, I send them a message like every other day. I was like, you guys are going to change the world, that, because we couldn't do it. My generation kind of screwed it up. We're going to try to fix it now. But since we didn't get the job done, you guys got to be the generation to change the world.
Absolutely.
So I really want to, just encourage everybody, send a message to your kids. Tell them you love them. Tell them, hey, if y'all want to have a conversation, let's have a conversation. Because they need a place where they can go. 9 out of 10 times, music kids are comfortable in their music atmosphere. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's a band kid, an orchestra kid, a chorus kid, when they are around their music directors and their music friends, they feel, regardless of color, they feel that they can be themselves. So I think it's important that we make sure, even though it's summer and we're distant because of pandemic and all this other stuff, we still got to be there, especially now for our kids. So I really encourage y'all who have those social media things set up, whether it's your remind text or you got a band or Facebook page or Instagram or whatever, just send them a message and encourage them to have the conversations with each other. And if you're there, if you need to be there for them, then be there for them. If not, they can do it on their own, but at least they're talking about it and making things happen. Thank y'all for really being here today. I think this is great. It's a great start. I'm really, really encouraged about where we're going.
Absolutely. And please, come to the summer conference. We've got a big schedule planned, and I wish we could all get together in person. I want to give Shelby a big old hug, but can't do that now.
That works.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming, everyone.
Thank you. Awesome. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
I enjoy being with you.
Thank you, Julian. We miss you. All right, I'll be in touch with you guys about what we need to do next.
Okay.
All right, take care.
Also, I just noticed, I'll go in and fix it, but Julian, it's Grub, not Grubs.
Oh, okay. All right. Sorry.
I looked up I'll get him added as a panelist also.
Yeah, for that collegiate one. And then I'm going to have an FBA member be also so that he.
Because Tara is the one that Jeff recommended, right? She's
Yeah.
the director from Georgia.
Yeah.
And Josh, he's ours.
Yeah.
He's Rhode Island, right?
Yeah.
Melbourne High School.
Melbourne, right. Okay.
Okay. All right. I'll
All
work
right,
on
thank
this
you,
tomorrow.
guys.
I'm going to call Paula Kreider tonight and then Tom Bracy.
Oh, and I sent you all the links.
Yes, I saw that. Thank you.
Okay.
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 All right. Bye.
Bye.
All right.